I'm Jacob Fraker.
Bianca Jamerson.
And I'm Jose Mora.
And we're going to talk about our Social Work 170 research paper. So we decided to kind of focus in on the rural community and wanted to pick a question that really applied to that specific community. So our original question when we started this assignment was, how does low socioeconomic status affect post-secondary academic achievement for students living in rural neighborhoods? So a little bit of background on the topic. Coincidentally, almost 20% of the entire United States population lives in rural America. And also interestingly enough, over half of all school districts fall within what would be defined as rural counties or rural areas, which is a definition that's generally based on specifically population and having a population of under 100,000 within that county. Also, about 1/4 of public school students throughout the United States go to rural school areas. One of the issues within rural areas is post-secondary educational achievement is a lot lower among parents of children in those rural areas compared to suburban or urban areas. We often know that a lot of students who don't have that parental support to go to post-secondary education are unable to attain it for themselves. Also, these areas are really unique in terms of their diversity. 71% of public school students were white, 13% identified as Hispanic, and 10% as African American or Black. And there's also obviously a small percentage of Asian Americans and potentially mixed race or Native Americans. So we see a really interesting perspective when we look at the rural community. We see a high density of people with low diversity and low secondary achievement. So we wanted to take a look at maybe why this is happening.
Okay, so when I was doing looking at literature on this topic, a study on rural students and poor rural students, there hasn't been data taken on that since 1989. So it was really hard to find data that, connected students that were low socioeconomic status and they lived in rural communities and how that was affecting whether or not they were going to college. But past studies on SES show that in general, students from low SES families in general don't do well in college. There's a huge gap in their academic achievement compared to students of higher SES, starting from kindergarten. So just from kindergarten to high school, these students that are poor are not doing well as the students from wealthier families that have different resources to give to their children. In addition, past studies on rural education, we know that students from rural communities are less likely to go to colleges just because of, it's not as close. Urban communities have more colleges that are closer to them. And low-income students that are in rural communities, they don't have, their parents didn't go to college, so they're not learning about that at home. So it's harder for them to, know what's going on, know what they need to do in order to go to college.
And we cannot afford to neglect the rural areas of America any longer. There are impoverished people that live in relatively non-diverse areas and therefore are never exposed to the plight and struggles of other communities and groups without the ability to see the struggles of other minority groups firsthand. It becomes difficult to emphasize and understand their reality. Our research suggests that they are less likely to attend post-secondary education because of their socioeconomic status, which limits their overall education, and as other studies have shown, hinders their willingness for social cohesion. And the three aspects of transcultural perspective that express the significance of our topic are power, privilege, and oppression, and cultural knowledge, and cultural competency. Most of the time when people consider culture, they are thinking in the context of race and ethnicity, but it is important to remember that there are countless cultures outside those boundaries and that they too face issues. Cultural knowledge and cultural competency are key to social workers' ability to understand and access any group of people, which in turn is critical to then further education and empower them. Without a keen understanding and strong grasp of the rural culture, social workers will be by and large ineffective at initiating change in their community. It is very clear that these outside rural areas have significant amount of privilege when it comes to higher education. Children in urban areas grow up in society that places a large emphasizes and normatized on post-secondary education, while those in rural areas are made to believe that such goals are unattainable.
Okay, so for our second, more in-depth research study, we decided to take a little bit more narrow-focused look at exactly what is going on in these rural communities, and then we decided also to kind of expand it in some ways, and that we compared some of our results to other areas. So our other question was, does the impact of college preparation information affect college enrollment differently in urban, suburban, and rural regions? Again, so the urban, suburban, and rural regions are all defined by our government as being within a certain population limit. And that is generally the definition used. So our overall research is looking at the relationship between an independent and dependent variable, but I guess very similar to a lot of other studies going on in today's class, as well as we looked at a moderating variable, and that being the different regions, which we'll get into a little bit later. In order to effectively do our research, we decided a self-administered survey would be best. And we would plan to do this as a longitudinal study at 2 points in time, 2 years apart. So we'll get into a little bit more of the details, but essentially we're going with self-administered survey over a longitudinal amount of time. So the questionnaire that we'll go over a little bit later would be handed out January 8th, 2018, and that questionnaire we would hand it out and make sure it's still continuing to go out all the way through April 30th, 2018. We would contact schools that are willing to participate in our survey, hand them out to first period teachers, and have them hand out those questionnaires to their students. We're shooting for juniors and seniors in the high schools throughout California. The second survey would be handed out 2 years later, January 8th, 2020, April 30th, 2020. And we would reach those same students that we reached out through a first questionnaire through email and hope for a little bit of a follow-up survey. So the high school locations we're looking at, we're trying to shoot for 90 schools, 30 schools per region, so that'd be 30 for urban, 30 for suburban, 30 for rural, with an overall student goal of 900 students. We want these schools to be up and down California. We want different ethnicities and gender and race all mixed in terms of our student goal, which we'll touch in more into our exact sample.
So the target population is going to be high school students in suburban or urban and rural areas. Another criteria for recruiting the high school students is that they must have junior or senior standing and have received college preparation information. The high school students, like Jacob said, will would take a self-administrated survey, and the students will voluntarily participate in the survey. The sampling technique, the participants will be recruited using the stratified sampling method, and the rationale sampling method chosen, a stratified sampling will be used to recruit high school seniors and juniors. I will contact the guidance counselor and other college office, depending if the high school has hosted these departments, to get a hold of the college preparation instructor in order to in order to test the hypothesis in this study. We're going to see if the college preparation courses and information about college increases the rate of high school students getting accepted to and attending college.
Alright, so in our study, our variables that we have 3 variables: dependent, independent, and moderating. So our dependent variables will be whether or not these students that are getting the surveys are actually going to college. And then our independent variable is the college information, the information on college that these students are getting from their high schools. And then our moderating variable is the region that these individual students are from. So in order to measure our dependent variable, we're going to do a follow-up survey to 2 years, which Jacob mentioned. And this is just asking them, did you graduate high school and attend college right after? So it'll be a simple yes or no, and if they didn't, if they're saying that they did not go to college, I'm just going to explain why, and that'll help us with our data to figure out whether or not these rural, non-rural, suburban, urban disparities have anything to do with whether or not these students are going to college. And so to find out these questions, we did a survey that we're giving to them. And on our first questionnaire, I'm just going to get basic demographic information. So the first question, establishes a moderator variable. Is the school located in a rural, urban, or suburban neighborhood? Secondly, race and ethnicity, just for data purposes. Gender, for data purposes. And then, did your parents go to college? Because this is often, a big indicator on whether or not you are, even thinking about college. So that's something we wanted to add in. And then, so the first part of the second part is a yes or no segment. So very straightforward to, reduce sampling errors, not confusing, just basic questions like, whether or not the school has a college office, or does your school offer, ways for you to, places to help you with your college applications. A lot of schools will make a mandatory SAT test, but other schools don't. So did your school make you take a practice SAT test? So just questions like that, yes or no, very straightforward for the second part of that. And then our third part is a 1 to 5 scale. These questions are about their students' opinions on the information they've gotten. So I'm asking questions like, are you confident about, you are confident about the college application process, and then if a student feels like they're confident that they know, they would put 5 for strongly agree. And if they feel like they really don't know anything and they haven't gotten information from high school, they could put 1 for strongly disagree. And also on this survey, I have questions like, the last question, which is the big part of our paper, is has your high school provided you with the skills and information you need to do well? So if we notice that in more rural schools, the students are answering, they disagree, this will give us the answer to what we need to know for that question. And then these are follow-up and a survey. Did you attend college within a year of graduating? And if no, we just want to know why. All right, so then a few limitations, as with any research.
So our main limitation within sampling is, the reality is, even though we're doing 900 students, which seems like a lot, there's 1.7 million high school students in California alone. So the reality is it is a fairly small percentage of those overall students. And we're also only looking at high schools at this point. There's charter schools, there's private schools, there's homeschool. And so we're not looking at those schools within rural areas, so we're only looking at this really kind of hyper-focused percentage of high school students. Ethical concerns, we're very happy that we have very few ethical concerns. The questionnaire will obviously be anonymous and confidential, as well as using our stratified sampling to make sure that we're not running into some sort of racial disparity. As we mentioned, in rural communities, they are predominantly white, and therefore we want to make sure that we're reaching out to everyone in the community in those areas to get feedback from them.
All right, so we have reliability, validity of instruments. Our survey will be really reliable because our questions are, like I mentioned, they're very clear cut, which will prevent sampling errors. As well, the survey has a really good internal consistency reliability, because the questions are all asked in different segments, but they're all measuring the same exact variable. So these different questions, while they're asked in different ways, they're all going to help us come up with our answer about that variable. Also, this survey is also valid because to ensure the validity, our questions are specific. I didn't ask any double-barreled questions, and there's a high level of content validity. So, for example, I asked the students if there's a college office at their school, which will let us know if there's a source and a place for them to get this college preparation information. But I also asked them about, their GPA and their personal plans about college, which can measure whether or not they're actually going to go. And for internal validity of our study, we were using a longitudinal design, which can prevent some errors that would happen, throughout time, like typical history, because we're just measuring right when they graduate. So we're asking them, it's juniors, seniors, are you going to high school? And it's pretty simple what the answer we're going to ask them afterwards. But a threat to internal validity is that, every student, regardless of race, regardless of their location, some parents have been giving their children information about college since birth. You know, they're always hearing about college, which is going to influence their decision. And external ability.
So within external ability and outside our study, we are looking at, I mean, even though it's a small percentage, this is still a large group of California students. So it won't be able to be generalized, obviously, to the United States in general, but there is potential for it to be generalized to California. There are, of course, issues with longitudinal studies. You lose people, you lose interest. 2 years later, that's a long time. It can be difficult to reach back out to those individuals after the 2-year mark and get the feedback that we need. And then, of course, there's also plenty of unaccounted contributing factors. There's plenty of other reasons an individual might not go to college. It might not just be SES. And we also are only looking at 2 years. So if an individual were to go to college, that 3rd year, we wouldn't be able to get that kind of info. So there's definitely some other external validity issues, but we really believe that our study has done our best to account for those errors and make sure we have the highest amount of validity in our study possible. So as references to some of the things we mentioned today, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you learned something today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for a lovely semester, Dr. Song.
Yay, Dr. Song.